Jim Mars is an investigative journalist, among the first to disclose information about the CIA's attempt to emphasize the ESP in espionage.
It was hard to crack the nut all the way through. The people who had actually participated in this remote viewing had all signed secrecy oaths. They all wanted to talk about the experience. You know, this is really something, you know. But they were constrained.
With the consent of Congress, psychic experiments received full funding for more than 20 years. And according to former remote viewers who must remain anonymous, there were successes. During the Iran hostage crisis, for example, remote viewers were able to describe the exact location where some hostages were being held. In 1982, when Brigadier General James Dozier was kidnapped by Italian terrorists, remote viewers helped guide anti-terrorist commandos to the building and even the room where Dozier was being held.
The military people who started this whole program, they were looking for results. They didn't care how it worked. They just wanted to know if it worked. And obviously they felt like it was working.
It was during the Cold War, in the 1960s, that the potential for remote viewing first came to the attention of the American military, after intelligence reports revealed that Russia was already using psychic espionage effectively.
This got the boys in the Pentagon going, you know, and their attitude was, we don't think there's anything to that, but if the Soviets are doing it, we've got to do it too.
Early studies conducted at the Stanford Research Institute were crude and haphazard. Psychic Ingo Swann was among the first to be called into the program.
When I first started in 1970, that control was sporadic. Some days the experiments did not work. But as I became more professionally involved with research and began to understand the processes involved, the control was probably about 95% effective.
As Swann's proficiency increased, so did his ability to analyze what worked and what didn't, and then teach remote viewing to military personnel. They, too, had a high success rate.
The trained remote viewer, my students anyway, had to be 85% correct 85% of the time. And they had to know when they were in error. You see, you can't take remote viewing and say, look, we can be successful 10% of the time or 20%, because that's not competitive to other ways of getting information. But 85%, 95%, this is a whole different thing.
News of the remote viewing success rate spread quickly, and by the mid-1970s, the program was part of the Army's Intelligence and Security Command. And within 10 years, psychic espionage was being used by several branches of the U.S. government.
They were looking for Soviet submarines. They were locating satellites. They were locating biochemical warfare facilities, rocket launching sites. They even worked with other agencies. They participated in some programs looking for drug-running ships. Even the CIA, on more than one occasion, asked them to try to see if they could locate moles, penetrating agents for an enemy power within the CIA.
But just recently, the CIA released a report stating that remote viewing successes cannot be corroborated and recommending that the Pentagon pull the plug.
This also comes into one of the aspects about the report that has just been made public by the CIA to the effect that, well, there seems to be some statistical basis for the fact that something's happening there in remote viewing, but we really don't think there's much to it. And this comes back to the scientific problem, which is if they can't explain why it does something, then it can't be happening. But I think the tip-off to the success of our program is the fact that it continued to be funded for a quarter of a century. So obviously somebody thought they were getting results from this.